begin again. It is Friday night, and I'm here. So, um, yeah, so if you've seen me go live and you've decided to come join me at the top of the time frame, thank you for showing up and being a part of the community and part of the conversation. Uh, as of today, we also have a couple of new developments. I was doing some research earlier about tools that I could utilize to kind of improve the experience, including being able to go on more than one platform at the same time, um, and be able to kind of monitor the experience for anybody who chooses to come join. Uh, but as of right now, still kind of trying to limit the additional purchases that I might make in order to support the stream, since, at the end of the day, it's kind of like I'm probably going to be at minimum hoping for, you know, obviously some patrons, but then also, maybe I'll get lucky and have one or two sponsorships over time. Um, I did actually have one sponsorship that we already got accepted into as kind of like a household, and I've been kind of debating as to whether or not I want to move forward with that, because after we made the application and they accepted us, they kind of went hardcore into spamming me with emails and text messages, and all of them were about like, use this coupon code and get a discount for your sponsored materials. And all I could think was like, I get that you're not gonna just send free product to everybody who's willing to shill for your company, but I I would much rather have like a dedicated discount code or something and be able to share that with the people who are watching. But of course, we don't really have a whole lot of people who are coming to hang out these days, so maybe over the course of time. So, anyway, that was my long story as to why I'm not hardcore pursuing the multiple platforms at this time, but it is on the radar. There was something else that came up, and now I forget. Oh, so they let me relaunch my Patreon page. So that's one of the things that has changed in the last day, is that now those people who do, for whatever reason, want to participate in that way, you can follow the link in the description and, subscribe, donate, whatever you may or may not feel like doing. And seriously, any encouragement is amazing. So, I honestly was thinking about just not logging in today, um, even though we've had, decent enough interaction over the last couple of days. Usually have one or two people who pop on. But today I'm just tired. Like, I went to, I went and did a couple of grocery deliveries. Um, I also got to have a couple of moments of breathing easier just because I, re- I received the severance package from um, my losing my job. And, so it's a sad thing when you like live paycheck to paycheck and you get that feeling of relief when, your paycheck hits your bank account. I really don't want to have that habit, because all it does is make things stressful. And, you know, that would end up being one of the many, many reasons why I was so bummed about losing the job, because it was the first job that I had in my whole life that ultimately appeared to be gearing me towards kind of self-sufficient, in the sense that I got to know for just like a brief period of time what it's like to decide you want groceries, and not because you don't have any food in the house, but because, that whole like nothing I feel like eating is in the house. Making the decision I need groceries, going to the store, and not worrying about uh like the final total so much while I'm shopping. Um, I'm still a cheapskate. I'll still tend to pick up things that are less expensive or if they're on sale or something. But I certainly was experiencing the freedom that is not having to do that. But I'm back into that whole deal of having to choke back, purchases and be really aware. And I know that's like totally a first world problem, and there's probably people who would come across that clip and be like, "Oh, typical suburban white lady problems." Um, and I get that, but I I hope that people will be at least modestly understanding of the fact that like I literally lived like that penny pitching lifestyle for years, and lived in a circumstance where um, I was constantly worried that I wasn't going to be able to pay my rent this month and stuff like that. So one of the reasons why it was so refreshing to be able to not worry about it is because of how long I have been worrying about it. So I guess there's that. Anyway, so I don't really have anything exciting planned for this particular stream. Nothing, like, no specific topic. Probably just going to go and do my whole typical free association thing that's been coming such my random appearance and show, or talk about whatever. Um, Anybody who's popping on is more than welcome to introduce a new subject matter or ask for an opinion or what have you. So, uh, I think the worst thing about not having a topic, though, is that I've definitely noticed that if I happen to be just talking when people uh, choose to click on my stream to see what's up, that ends up being a, a circumstance in which they are more likely to hang around, and which makes sense. I'm like, it's not super fun to watch people play the kinds of games that I play, but it does make me feel like I have to be talking the entire time, which is another reason why I thought maybe I wouldn't do this today, because I'm not sure how much I want to talk, I guess. Anyway, I hope anybody who chooses to pop on by or, comes across this randomly is having a decent day and is not too fretful or scared or um, overwhelmed by the life events that are going on right now. It's so weird. Like, as I was catching up on uh, my current events for the day, or, during this morning or whatever, just being exposed to the stories and the decisions that are being made and the justifications that people are utilizing. It's it's just really weird to me. Like, I think part of why it's really weird to me is because I think about my own life and the kinds of expectations that are set upon me in my own life. And then I watch what happens, in Washington, or, with general, like the way that celebrities or what have you kind of present themselves. I watch this and I think, like, is that really life for them? Like, it's such an alien thing to me. Like, I try to tell myself that people who are in Hollywood or who are famous um, just simply live a different style of life. Like, I can't even, the reason why I can't conceptualize or relate to it is because their life experience is just so far separate from mine that, like, there's not ever going to be like a really connecting place. So, like, that's okay. It's all right that we're not sharing the same life experiences all the time. But it's, I don't know. It's weird to me. And obviously, like, there's so many of us who are kind of really focused on things with the election and um, just general life, that these people are okay. Like, I really don't know what's up with this cat. Like, she just doesn't like it when there's no, like, when your attention is on something else. But if I'm, like, directly requesting her attention, she gets mad. She gets frustrated with me. So, I guess that's, I'm sure there would be plenty of people like, well, welcome to having a cat, and just not sharing any sense of, empathy or whatever. But I do get pretty frustrated with it sometimes. I'll tell you, like, the first night that, like, one of the first nights that we had her home, uh, I was trying to make sure she didn't get on the kitchen counters a whole lot. Like, I just am not interested in the idea of having cat hair and stuff in the food that I'm making. But, like, she was so curious and so interested in what was going on that she just kept hopping up there, and I got to the point where, like, I literally was going to start yelling at this cat. I was going to start, you know, yelling at her, obviously in a language that is not her language, and, as if it was going to do anything for me. So, thinking about it, like, looking back or whatever, I kind of feel a little bit bad about it, but you're welcome. Like, she literally, every time I start even trying to talk. She's just like crawling down my shoulders and stuff. Like, I don't mind if she's in my lap or whatever, but I'm like, it's the constantly leaving, and if I touch her, she bolts, but then comes back and crawls down my shoulders again. Mm, I like having the sound, but I'm afraid it's too annoying. Oh, I guess she's pretending now. She's hunting now. She's like freaking out. She's an elderly cat. She's a grandma cat, but she acts like a kitten. And she's a kitten that really, really likes her catnip. Oh my goodness. Like, I don't mean to be like complaining or whatever, but I am very tired. I don't really know why. Honestly, like I came into the streaming area for pretty much one reason and one reason only, and that was to hold my promise. Whereas I was pretty sure I said last night that I'd be around today. And I'm here, obviously, but um, I just don't know how long I'm gonna last. So I'm actually swapping out what I'm doing today. I'm gonna go back to our jigsaw puzzle game. What do you think you're doing? Darn cat. Speaking of cats, and there she is, almost on cue. I'm like, if you're gonna keep doing that, you're gonna have to play with me. I got you. You're stuck. I do think at least some of this is just because she's cold. Are you chilly? Who knows? But as you see, the minute I go to, pet her, touch her, whatever, I realize that some people would say that, the way that I was holding her or whatever is gonna be problematic, but there are certainly days where she just chills out and are you serious? Hey, knocking things over now. Let's see. So, one of the topics of conversation that I have been contemplating quite a bit over the last day and a half or so has to do with um, like the political environment in regards to things like Facebook and the choices that they make regarding what they allow to publish on their platform and what they will say is inappropriate for the platform. Um, this has been in my thoughts recently because, as I've mentioned before, I spent a good chunk of time watching progressive news shows and, I don't know, like, I don't really pay attention to what the general public opinion and discourse is about the actual shows themselves. So I realize that, like, I'm wholly unaware of whether or not I'm partaking of popular things. Like, if I'm essentially just participating in, a different wave of celebrity worship or, following or whatever you want to call it. I don't know if that's what I'm doing or if it just so happens to be something that I find particularly interesting and therefore it just works out that way. Um, Obviously, if a person's popular, it probably means that they're making content that is generally attractive to people. That or it's generally like controversial and pisses people off a lot. But it's I guess it's just not something that like I didn't find any of this stuff that I watch by typing in who's the most popular commentator um, on progressive issues. So anyway, uh, I've also mentioned the fact that I watch the damage report every day. Now that I don't have a job to really navigate through or what have you, um, I do end up watching it in real time. Like I'll log in on the actual live stream, which is something that I didn't get to do for a long time. Like for a long time, I had to like catch up catch up with it every day at like 9 o'clock at night. And I would sit there after work watching, trying to find the full length clip and watching that, and then spending a chunk of time sort of navigating around and watching the smaller clips for like the highlights and stuff. Um, and that's kind of how I opened the door to feeling a little bit more informed. I know I'm not the only person who did it through that avenue. And I mean, recently it's been really great to watch how that forum is actually growing for John. Um, which I say, as if we're friends, but we're not, like at, at best, he'll maybe recognize my ID eventually because um, he's the only person, uh, well, I guess not the only person, but his show is one of two shows that I've sent super chats into. Anyway, he was talking about, like, I mean, it's Friday, so it's garbage people of the weekday, and one of the many reasons why uh, I tune in on Fridays. Uh, so he's got a good thing going on there, and I like listening to Brett, which is his kind of permanent Friday co-host. But what they do, for those who are watching this randomly, whatever, if you're not familiar with the Garbage People of the Week uh, deal, the premise of it is that you have the whole week full of news, and then on Friday, like over the course of the week, you do a running poll and a tally of people voting on who they think is basically the worst person for this week. Like, who do we need to drop into the trash? And as you can imagine, a lot of times it ends up being people like Trump because of how disastrously, um, nauseatingly frustrating he can be, and the choices that he makes being so completely off base and disconnected from who we are as a society. Um, so it's a good segment. You kind of get a litmus test, or you get at least some sense of where other people are considering the situation to be. Like, are you feeling hopeful? Like, who are you kind of targeting as being to blame for some of these things? Yada, 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 yada. So today, John's trash person was Mark Zuckerberg. And, I find it an interesting conversation sometimes to like hear people talk about their feelings regarding Zuckerberg, and, the jokes about him being a robot, and, um, just kind of trying to mimic human emotions, but not quite being there with his stone cold dark eyes and yada 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 yada, all this stuff. People, like, all types of people have jokes about it. But like the reason he made trash person of the week is because he had put out a statement saying that, um, despite the fact that Twitter made the decision to kick out Steve Bannon, and other platforms had made that decision as well, at the minimum removing his recent video content, if not removing his entire profile altogether. But a notable difference within the context of the world was that Zuckerberg allowed for Bannon to remain on the platform at Facebook. And so, you start thinking about this like, okay, so celebrities get a pass, okay, fine. But one of the things that I was completely aware of before watching John's show today was the fact that um, that David Pakman had been demonetized. I was surprised to find out that Mark Zuckerberg had made a public statement explaining why he felt it was okay to allow Bannon to remain on the platform, while simultaneously sending notice to people like David Pakman for talking about Bannon. Like, that's like the crux of the issue. It's not just, oh, you're inflammatory and, overly political, or, giving any sort of more broad commentation, I don't make up a word, without making like a broader comment in regards to the kinds of content that Pakman actually puts together. And I could see, a platform that doesn't really want to have kind of political arguments and stuff on it, saying to a person like David Pakman, like, this isn't the right place for this. But clearly, like, that's not how they roll. Like, they've been pretty obviously welcoming to, a fair number of political things, but they demonetized him, while also publicly supporting Bannon's continued access to the platform. And I just find it really strange. And like, there's a part of me that like wonders if maybe on the back end somewhere, the, law enforcement has essentially said, hey, we give him the access to it, let him retain his access to it, because if he tries to use the platform for organizing, it'll be a lot easier to trace the people who are responding and planning alongside him, if we have their connecting information through that. But it's kind of messed up that, at least arguably on the face of things, they seem to be giving preferential treatment to a person who is expressing and encouraging violence. So the thing about like how it ties to the damage report today is that when they were talking about this, they were only talking about the fact that Zuckerberg had allowed Steve Bannon to stay on the platform. They were not talking about comparatively, the issue of being demonetized for talking about the situation, or having to be particularly careful about what video clips you show and what kind of mentions those video clips have, because people were being at least short-term banned for sharing it. Now, so, to be in my rambling, aimless way as happens, I kind of fall into the camp that is, I think both people should be able to freely access. Do I agree with Bannon's sentiments? Absolutely not. I don't support this idea that any person who has been contrary to our current president should be strung up as an example. I honestly, like, I find it so horrendously offensive. Like, I don't I don't understand why a person who would be, you know, even if they're conservative or, they think of it as old fashioned or whatever, I can't imagine how a person who's been raised and grew up in a relative time frame to where I was growing up that would think that this kind of stuff is okay. Like, where, it's a reasonable or logical conclusion to say we we kill people like this. I mean, he freely acknowledged that it would be going back to, you know, an age that we're not in anymore. I don't remember exactly what, um, historical era he was really talking about, so I don't want to misquote. But, he very clearly said, like, I think we should go back to, like, those old school days in which, you know, when you made mistakes like that, we should make an example out of you. I I don't agree with it at all and all of that stuff, but I also don't really agree with the idea that, you know, we should be chucking this kind of incitement out. I think that the more, I mean, especially now that there is the development and the growth of places like Parlor, like what you end up seeing is like all of these people who have contrary beliefs who want to plan on, you know, whatever takeover they're eyeballing right now. Um, it's basically just encouraging people to hide that information into like secret alcoves so that we'll end up taken by surprise. Like, we'll end up being completely out of touch with it. And I don't know. I don't want to give horrible people the benefit of my orchestrating their hiding of their terribleness, if that makes any sense at all. Like, why would I do you that favor? Why would I say, okay, well, I'm going to make sure that nobody sees how terrible of a person you are? Because my real opinion is I think everybody should see how terrible of a person you are and be fully aware of who they're supporting and what, you know, ideas they're supporting when they click like. I, I mean, it just seems so unfortunate that by making these decisions on behalf of a community that didn't really ask for those decisions to be made, um, it how it will ultimately potentially jeopardize the safety of that same community. But like I was just saying that I was just mentioning the fact that like Parlor exists, and so like when I first heard about this Parlor platform, I still haven't gone and checked it out, but um all I re- all I really needed to know was that it was catering towards, a more conservative mindset, a more conservative view, to know whether or not it was going to be of particular value to me as like an individual. But I will say that I have been super tempted to create an alias, create an access account simply so that I could watch. So I could peek in, I could see what people were talking about. And, I just, like, I still think about that. Um, I don't know. It did make me wonder though, like if they're being that uh, if they're making those kinds of choices to help uh, mitigate the negative experiences people might have on the platform. Um, like, where is the line going to be drawn for me? Like, assuming that I can successfully continue being here, participating, giving people this platform to have these conversations, um, which I sincerely hope that it can continue, but um, the more it continues and the more people are aware of it and and want to participate in the general experience of things, the more likely it is that somebody's going to take a look at what I'm doing and start making some decisions as to whether or not I should be accessible. And, like the line that determines your accessibility anymore seems to be, your celebrity status. Because just like a normal random person on the internet gets kicked out of the club, like you have to be careful. You absolutely have to abide by the terms of service and uh, be aware of how it could be interpreted from like a nuanced perspective in order to retain your access. And, I have a couple of friends who are particularly outspoken and very opinionated about certain things, and they are routinely silenced. 30 days, 60 days, on and on and on, to try and, discourage them from having the conversation that they were already having. And I think it sucks because it's like, okay, well, why do I have to watch you censor my friends? My friends who, like, I know and I'm actively and personally choosing to be exposed to these people. They are my friends. So why would, an anonymous robot platform holder person have a better idea regarding what I want to see? But I for, and some people will say, well, I don't make the rules, I just follow them. So following the tangent from that little blurb or whatever, um, I know I said that I was thinking about creating like an alias and going to check out Parlor and what it's all about. Um, Seriously, it's in the front of my mind when I start thinking about this stuff. But one of the other things that has come up recently, and the way I personally heard about it for the first time, the whole Parlor thing, is a friend of mine from high school. She's not really a close friend of mine. She's one of those people that like I got along with okay in high school and I liked her okay, and we decided to, you know, create a connection as adults, but like she literally she doesn't care. She's not watching what's going on in my life, and she's certainly not like trying to make sure I'm okay. So we're not really friends, but you know how it is. You call people like that your friends these days because people get all pissy and mad if you're honest and you say that, this isn't really one of the people that you consider your friend. It's a whole nother game, a whole nother ball game, and a whole nother social construct that does not make any sense to me whatsoever. This idea that like it's offensive for me to uh, correctly define the relationship that I have with you. Anyway, I heard about Parlor from her. And not because she like reached out and told me personally that she thought I would get a kick out of it or whatever. She had posted about how she was starting to get really frustrated with all like the negativity and stuff that you see on Facebook, and therefore she was thinking about moving to a different platform because really her only like true interest in doing social media is to share with family and friends and to share pictures of her kids and all of that kind of stuff. And apparently she and her husband have been exploring some of these other options. So she flat out said that that they liked Parlor. And I had not heard about it ever, but the people who responded to her post knew exactly what she was talking about. And I'd be so fascinated. I was so fascinated to like become aware of how that information disseminates, because sometimes I'll watch the news and stuff, be getting my details, and I think that I'm learning about what's actually happening in the world and what's going on currently and all of that stuff. But then clearly, the spin that is being communicated to other people, like more conservative minds are toying with a presentation of this information that is different than how I came across it. And it makes me really curious as to like how did I end up going down this road and they ended up going down a different road. And even though we're learning about the same reality and the same celebrity drama and the same fill in the blank, we are living in the same dimension, but the information that is disseminated on the other side of the spectrum of politics, like I would be fascinated to know exactly how that happens, like how we end up going down the roads that we do. I assume that they gather information and they partake of the information in similar fashion to like what I'm doing, where they've found they're like watching things like Ben Shapiro, and that's where their predominant influence for their opinions comes from, whereas I'm watching things like the Damage Report. I think it would be a really interesting like sociological study though. If you could trace it all the way back to like the origin story, like who do you watch if you were to say something like Ben Shapiro, and then they say, okay, well, where did you get to Ben Shapiro from? And then you start kind of hop skipping and jumping back. you find out that like it's all rooted in, you know, families with that meet certain criteria, or uh, individuals that had certain life experiences, something. I'd be interested to know how we end up determining those paths. At least part of that interest comes from the fact that, like, I feel like the way that I look at the world and the, you know, kind of the political opinion that I am walking around with is so common sense and is so unquestionably right. You know, not that I'm right, but like from a moral perspective, I don't question what I've chosen or what I believe about the situation or what I'm learning about the situation. So it's weird to think about the fact that there's a whole hell of a lot of people whose, you know, experience and interpretation and exposure is contrary to what I've been going through for the last, you know, however long it's been that I've been paying attention. I don't know. Anyway, I think I'll probably sit here and ramble until an hour is up, and if I'm still here by myself, I'm going to call it a night just because I am tired. And I bought some Russian ice cream, and it's kind of calling my name. It's really good. If you have the opportunity to have plum beer, you should have it because it's really good. And especially since we're all like perpetually on the edge of going extinct, what better way, what better day for you to experience plum beer than today? I don't know. I feel like as I get older and I'm more and more of an adult, I feel like the magic of existing is progressively fading away. Like I want to have that wonderful feeling that I used to have where things like where there was just like a lot of a sense of beauty and curiosity. That does make me think about something else that I was watching the other day, and so maybe it'd be a good way to end it. So, you know, I watch a bunch of different channels. I watch a bunch of different things. I like to get a lot of opinions and perspectives. So, um, you know, usually it's in that progressive realm, but every once in a while I'll go into more of like a person story, or, you know, a channel that's full of content that is more about what it's like to be a person. And so a long time ago, I stumbled across a channel that is called SBSK. Um, I highly recommend it just because the stories can be really fascinating and you learn a lot about like rare diseases, especially genetic disorders. Simply because like the whole premise of it is that they invite people who are living life from a perspective that would be not your typical. It's not an average experience, and they encourage you to advocate for the conditions that you live with. Oh, that's my hair. I was like, what's on my shoulder? Anyway, so they have this whole series of people um, that volunteered to discuss the nature of their disabilities or illnesses. And then they do these interviews where they kind of try to connect with the humanity of the person, because a lot of the time, like, the people they're interviewing are, nonverbal, or people who um, we certainly don't have like an underlying encouragement from a day-to-day perspective for us to consider, casual conversation with a person who's nonverbal or whatever. So they have these really fascinating stories, and they talk about these experiences, and I like it because I live with my own set of conditions, my own formulation of disability, and oftentimes feel like I am 100% by myself, and that there isn't ever going to be a person who's like, yeah, I got you. I always feel like I have to explain myself, always feel like I have to um, effectively justify why things weren't working the way that they're supposed to or whatever. Anyway, so they have the series, and they have this one gentleman that they've had on a couple of times now. And that gentleman, like the first time he was on the show, they were just talking about what it was like to live with a schizoaffective disorder. And, he was talking about his delusions and, his feelings about the world and all of this stuff. And apparently, like, there was some fallout from that video, and he had some pretty significant personal life issues that occurred shortly thereafter, including a pretty significant um, life risk. And so they ended up going back to talk to him again. And in the second conversation, he goes into this like kind of long statement about feelings and, about the world and hope and the lack thereof, what have you. And I'm really glad that they let him just speak. I'm really glad that at the end of it all, he just had the ability to be heard, and that they honored his experience by shutting the fuck up and just letting him have his peace. So it was really great to see, but then there was also like this element where what he was talking about was something that I recognized profoundly within myself, which I'm sure was part of the point in leaving it kind of unadulterated. That gave people the opportunity to see that, like, even though he he has these diagnosed conditions, like this is how he thinks, and it gave us the opportunity to kind of connect and say, wait, like I think like that too. So that's what I originally thought when I watched that particular um, revamp episode, or like I don't know how to put it, but shortly after I had that thought where it was like, it was really nice to kind of see them allow him to express his feelings, and I wonder how many people connected with it in that way, and yada yada. I thought it was really great until, the thought dawned on me that what he was talking about was not alien to me. Like his feelings of the fact that like he hasn't felt happiness in years. Like there was like a point in his life where it just shut off. And like you could just hear it in him that he's like, I remember having the experience. I remember that it exists, but I can't recreate the feeling. I can't get a glimmer of it. I can't touch it at all. And I just was sitting here like, I don't believe I cried, but I think that I got pretty close because when I was listening to him, I just thought about the fact that like I think we probably all have some kind of level of profundity to us, but like it made me think about the fact that like when people talk about stuff like pain management, like when I was in physical therapy the other day, they had a student in there and they ask you like, where's your pain at today? Where is it on the pain scale? And I said, it's not too bad. It's like a 5. And the look on the student's face was like, what? And I was just like, I mean, that's life. Like, that is my not so bad. On the general average pain scale, I'm considered to be in a good place if I'm reporting a 4 or a 5. Like, from a clinical perspective, that's our goal. And that's our goal because we have already determined years ago that the goal of being pain free is not reasonable and not attainable. So you have to set goals that you could actually achieve. And, sometimes I'll get into it and I have told more than one person over the course of my life that I have no memory of what it's like to not be experiencing pain in some way, shape, or form. Like, I can't think about like a time when I was a kid because even like when I talk to my mom about it, she'll acknowledge that, at a very young age, I was dealing with things like migraine and, um, it just, I have no memory of it. I remember well, I guess, it's not exactly true. Like, I have no memory of being pain free without the assistance of like a pharmaceutical or, weed or something. But I remember the first time I smoked weed, um, and how, like, the laughter that came out of me was uncontrollable. And it was this laughter that came from just complete and utter incredulousness that messing with my brain chemistry in just such a simple way. Just taking a couple of hits on a pipe completely changed the experience that I was having in that moment. I could, I didn't have to worry about hurting for 15 minutes. And it was phenomenal. So, at the end of the day, you know, that experience that this guy was reporting, like, it made me think about the fact that, like, if I relate so specifically to what he's talking about, what does that really mean in the context of my life? Does that mean that I too am ill in the same way that he is ill? Or does that mean that what he perceives as being abnormal is actually status quo? Like, what if the whole reason that he has ultimately come down to these diagnoses and this experience he's had medically and his attempts to escape that feeling is all based around the assumption that nobody else ever experiences this. So he's like completely by himself, and there's no connection, there's nobody there to reassure him, none of it. So he just feels so utterly alone. But the reason why he feels that way is because he hasn't been exposed to other people who are experiencing it. And so it made me think, like, if we continue to encourage people to openly express their experiences, their feelings, their frustrations, like, we could literally change the world, and we could change the experiences people are having within the context of that if we embraced the idea of honesty. Like, when when did we get to a point where being truthful was still a game? Where you want to be truthful, you want to say the right things, but you want to make sure you walk that fine line between saying enough but not saying too much, providing emotions but not overly so. Like, it's still this game. It's this game about making sure other people are okay with how you feel. And then the question is kind of like, okay, well, uh if we're concerned about how other people feel, then, oh, this person is frustrating me. Where did they just put it? Like, that's the kind of, like, this is a total side note, but, like, that's the kind of puzzle doing that irritates the crap out of me. Is that, it's the simplest move. It's something that that person could have completely accomplished, and they were one piece over from where they needed to be. But I guess that's a pretty good analogy of life. There are just going to be times where we are one piece over from where we need to be. And if we had the perspective from the outside, like the other people who are working on the puzzle, we'd be able to see where it fits. But because we are restricted to the perspective that we have as an individual, that door isn't open to us. Anyway, I think I'm going to retire my Friday night. I'm going to go try to do some nice things for myself and maybe actually fall asleep in the bed tonight instead of on the couch, but at the minimum I'm ready to chill. So, I don't know if this like ramble of the day is going to help anybody or if anybody is going to bother watching it, but um, if you do, thank you very much. Uh, we are still trying to kick this stream off uh, to be something. It's a week old now, and I'm feeling pretty good about it. It's just small, and yeah, like I think as we move forward, it would be really great. So if if you're watching this and you're interested, please like and subscribe and keep an eye out for the next time that I go live. I am trying to focus on doing live streams most evenings during the week, uh, just to continue building a community of, discussion, opinion, and connection. There's a Facebook page, there's Patreon, there's all kinds of stuff. You just go ahead and look at the description of this video to find the identifiers, links, and other pieces of information that are necessary. This includes the email address that is attached to this channel, where we're really trying to focus on bringing in questions, concerns, and discussion topics through that email address so that we can so that I can talk about the things that people really need to talk about, not just like the things that are bugging my brain today. So, there's that. I do plan on being here tomorrow night for a more significant length of time. We shoot for around 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. If you would like to provide a request regarding the time or any kind of administrative type things, I would really appreciate it if you contacted me through Facebook to let me know, like, I guess ultimately when you think would be a good time for us to have these conversations. So, anyway, on that note, I am going to say goodbye. I'm going to say goodnight. Hopefully, I don't have the same thing that happened last night where I was signing off and right as I was saying goodbye,